Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the CoinGeek Weekly Livestream. I am your host, right here, Mr. Kurt Wuckert Jr. We are rocking live from sunny South Florida, where it is muggy, man. It's so funny. All of a sudden, like, May hits and, like, boom, you get the heavy clouds and starts to rain. And yeah, it's gonna be like this for 3 or 4 months. So we are doing our best here. This is the season when we expect to have occasional technical difficulties due to the weather. And then it'll straighten back out in late October. We're all gonna be just fine. I can see Joey saying the same thing. He's up in Northwest Florida, and it's also quite humid. But you know, that's the beauty of living in the tropics, is our winters are better than everyone's, and then the summers are you know, can be a little sketchy. Good thing we work in our climate controlled homes, and our power is mostly stable. So also seen a lot of good crowd here, everybody. What's up, Rory? What's up, Mr. Messy Times, Christopher? Got Brett, and who else we got floating through here? A few others we recognize. Mr. KK Wuckert. All right, everybody. So we are we're doing the thing. But before we do the thing, I want to thank our sponsors, our constant and perennial sponsor, Rock Wallet, the greatest wallet for housing your Bitcoin and various altcoins, your stable coins, and all the good stuff, including the new stablecoin Money, which does not require any gas because it uses the Bitcoin SV protocol. Pretty cool stuff. If you would like to use Money or Rock Wallet, check them out at rockwallet.com. It is a completely non-custodial wallet, so you control your keys, and therefore you control your coins. And if you want to do some exchanging, you can do that right inside the wallet. They also have the ability to buy with credit card and other stuff, all connected to the Rock Wallet ecosystem. They're really good product, good people, and pleasant to work with. So check out Rock Wallet and Otherworldly TCG. So the Otherworldly folks are very happy to send out a full pack of cards to the comment of the day every single week. And they've been doing this for like a year now. So thank you to the Otherworldly TCG folks. It is a game that exists both in the physical world and exists as tokens on the blockchain. It has a nice little referral program, so the physical stores that sell the cards, well, they're getting affiliate rewards every time people are doing business on the chain with their game. Pretty cool stuff going on over there. So thank you, Otherworldly TCG. Check them out as well. And then also, they're not a sponsor yet, but I would like to get Orange Gateway to be sponsoring the show, because they are updating and iterating on their site. It all looks pretty grand, and I'm a big fan of Thor, the CEO, who we've talked to before, but doing the hard stuff, which is, you know, setting up all the banking licenses and all that nonsense to be able to do the exchanging, based out of Iceland, and it's a really nice product. It works well. So this is just an unpaid endorsement during my commercial segment. So to our sponsors, thank you twice, and to Orange Gateway, thanks for putting in the hard work, and we would love to have you as a sponsor. So please reach out to the real CoinGeek account over on X, please. So I also just pinned a post. I went to Mining Disrupt about a month ago, and I've been doing an industry-wide sort of analysis on the nature of hash power, what's going on the infrastructure side of the Bitcoin ecosystem broadly, like Bitcoin, everything, SHA-256, right? So that includes your BTC, BCH, there's even a bunch of altcoins were being mined at the thing, and as well, you know, BSV mining, which, you know, I was one of a few people. There's actually a handful of people that were at the event that were doing that, but I was talking about the nature of what's going on industry-wide, and I'm not really sure what to make of it, but I made a whole video. So my pinned post on X right now links to an article, and the article has a video where I kind of go over the state of the industry and how basically 95% of what everybody's making their money on is things like power arbitrage, power curtailment agreements, carbon credit swaps, or getting paid by various organizations for helping deal with trapped gas, like methane in a garbage heap, or like a natural gas vent as it relates to fracking, you know, that kind of thing. So lots of interesting stuff going on in the space, and there's still a lot of money to be made, but that money is decreasingly based on proximity to Bitcoin or Bitcoin's economy itself, which is a little bit weird. So I give my thoughts about that. I would really appreciate it if you click the link, my pin post on X, and watch the video and give me some feedback. All of that helps us immensely. So thanks in advance to everybody who decides to do such a delightful thing. Our guest this week after we play the ad. Our guest this week is Dr. Eva Porras. I'm not a native Spanish speaker. I'm sure she has a lovely roll of the R in there to correctly say the last name, but I'm doing my best. And she's a blockchain educator, entrepreneur, frankly, a serial entrepreneur. She's had her fingerprints put on all kinds of delightful things in the blockchain space and working hard. So we're going to be talking about kind of the state of things, like what's going on in the blockchain economy. How do we get out of the slump that there is about utility? It almost seems like if utility is the thing that's important, it actually gets it pushed away because of so much power of speculation and just how much that's the exciting thing for everybody, including all the way up to like the White House. They don't even want to talk about what anything is being used for. They just want to keep buying coins. And I don't know. So somehow we got to break the cycle here and get people actually using these tools to make the world a better place. And Dr. Porras is, well, she's one of the people doing the hard work. So I'm excited to have her on in a couple minutes here. So if you'd like to be advertising with us, please reach out to the official X account on, or the official CoinGeek account on X, and we'll get that organized. So I'm going to take a little breather. We're going to play an ad from Rock Wallet, and we will be right back. Hello, Eva. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much, Kurt. How are you?
I'm quite well. It's a delight to have you. We haven't spoken in a while. I mean, we've hung out in person a few times. I've seen you at a few conferences, and we speak sometimes, but I feel like it's been at least a year. So I feel like we have kind of a lot to catch up on.
Yes.
So I guess for anybody who doesn't know you, could you perhaps give us the brief version of your Bitcoin story? How did you get into the technology? What did you find, or did you think it was exciting? Were you a critic? And how have you ended up where you are today?
So, my PhD is in finance. And in 2010, I think, I had published a book on cost of capital. And I was just thinking of, the next edition and updating it, and I was trying to study how digital currency, digital money would impact the cost of capital. So, I was reading many things, and suddenly I ran into the white paper, into Satoshi Nakamoto's 2008 paper, and I read it, and I thought this is the best thing I've read. I mean, I don't know, in my half of my life at least, So I thought this will happen. It's going to be a revolution, and it's going to change the world as we know it. So at that time, this was, I think this was 2010, and nothing was going on, so I was trying to just find papers, see who was publishing what, I even was keeping like a spreadsheet. And then suddenly it flourished, and there were so many things going on that you couldn't follow up anymore. So I kind of shifted my focus from finance into blockchain, usability. Basically, I am one of those people who think the value is on the use of the technology as a problem solver, and this is what I exercise my role since that time, basically since 2010. First, basically as a studious person, and then trying to develop solutions, writing, trying to illuminate different aspects of the sector, and also in education, which I think is key. People need to. There's a lot of noise. There has been a lot of noise, and it's time that noise comes down and people start to understand the real value of the technology, how it works, so that they can make smart, informed decisions about, how to go about it.
Sure.
So this is like my story.
Great. So, I mean, that's one of the interesting things is that we have this consistent, and I've been doing this about 10 years myself professionally. Like when I got to the point 10 years ago where I really felt like, okay, I think I understand this technology pretty well. I'm gonna start podcasting, and I wanted to educate people on, hey, here's how to do the basics. And then it turned into, well, hey, here's how you can program smart contracts, or here's how you can use it in your business. And there's just it's weird because people tune out the utility part, because I think, most people know someone who either got really rich or someone who got really burned. And I think that's two sides. Somebody either got totally scammed and they hate it, or they know somebody who turned, $100 into $1 million, and they see that as what the technology is for. And I find it so hard to kind of cut through and explain, like, hey, if you have a business that has a data problem or a payments problem, this could be a technology that could make you 100 times more efficient, or maybe more. And I don't know why it's so hard to break through. What do you think we're missing? Like, if you had a magic wand and $1 billion, how would you explain this to people in such a way that they would think and say, you know what, maybe I will invest in upgrading my company to use the technology?
I think I'm going to say something that is not politically correct, but you need a reasonable audience,
Yeah.
And it's difficult to find because, reasonable audiences are working, they are going about their lives, they have enough on their plates,
Yeah.
So maybe they are not the first comers into revolutions, technological revolutions. They are doing other things, they have other types of positions in the economic, let's say, pyramid. And so the first guys who come in are the ones who basically understand some practical matters about the technology. It doesn't mean that they really understand the usability or the benefit, but they know how to use a wallet, they know how to buy, they know how to sell. And then they have a dream of becoming rich without working. So I think that is not a reasonable audience. I mean, I think that's great, and I am very happy if somebody solves their economic problems in any way that is legal and ethical. But obviously this is not the purpose of this technology. This technology has a purpose. It was created with such a vision in mind, and the vision is fully described. And then after that, things happen.
Yeah. Well, and so it's interesting. I think, people have said for a long time that the price is the best marketing tool for Bitcoin. And I think in some ways that's been true. Like, people, when it hits some new big number, like all of a sudden it's plastered everywhere, everybody's excited. And then you get new people asking, how do they get involved? Like that kind of thing. But I think it's also been a big detriment because it creates opportunity cost, right? Like I always go back to thinking about, all the times that I have spent money investing in some aspect of my business, whether it's my blockchain related businesses or some of my other, enterprises. And thinking back, it's like, well, had I not done any of that, I just bought like more Ethereum or something, like I would have so much more money had I literally not worked. If I just worked a very, like, whatever basic job that I have in my life and just put away 10% of my earnings into ETH or Bitcoin or something, that I would frankly have more money in. So I look at that and say, well, for now 12 years or so, I've been suboptimal. Like I am not optimizing my portfolio with the way that I'm managing it, but I still think that the market is wrong. I think that I'm early, and I think that at some point there will be a payoff, but there's that opportunity cost. And I think teaching people how to use the tech, at least conceptually in their business, I think is one of those things. You have to show somebody why it would be 10 times better or 100 times better. And as somebody who works in education about the tech, what if you were to break it into 2 or 3 key things? Like what do you tell somebody, or what do you teach them about the technology in order to maybe spark that entrepreneurial spirit, or get them to start to ask better questions anyways? Do you have a little system that you use, or is it something maybe in curriculum that you've helped develop?
Basically, I always depart from problems. Everybody has problems. Every business has a type of problem. And this is a multi-purpose technology. It's like a white level technology. So when I am talking to entrepreneurs, I basically focus on their problems, and I talk about how this technology, if you properly use it, can save you money, can make a big difference for you as a business, because you can distinguish yourself from your competition, from your competitors. I think this is a key aspect of it. You don't want to be the first, you don't understand it. Obviously, there is an investment, even if it is not so much economical investment, because it's really not. Adoption is not expensive at all. But it's an investment in mental resources, in training your employees, in changing the way you think about things. However, it sets you up in a totally different sphere. Once you are the business that guarantees in a way that is truthful and immutable, so once you guarantee your processes, your documentation, the competition immediately is at a loss, and this is the basis. This can become the basis, if you want to use it that way, to to position yourself with your customers. So it's a way in which you establish trust, and you immediately differentiate your operations and your relationship with your clientele from that of other people. And it's very easy to do. And of course, the other people will need to catch up, because otherwise they have to explain why they are not catching up. So I usually depart from a problem and a solution that is relevant to those in the audience.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting especially because it's such a general purpose tool. Like, it's kind of like explaining the internet to somebody, but it's 1995, right? Like, they kind of vaguely understand why it might be a good idea, but you kind of can't picture social media marketing or even just email to somebody in 1995. Like, why email as a disruptive concept? In fact, there were people who had careers talking about why the internet is a fad, and it's going to go away. And so it's a weird problem, especially because I think there's so much confusion today because there's so much opportunity. And I think a lot of people don't have an entrepreneurial spirit like they did maybe 10 or 15 years ago in the first place. Like, increasingly, you see young people are like, I don't know, I don't really want to work at a restaurant and work my way up into some bigger career. They just want to like hang out on Robinhood, and they're trying to trade their way, as a 19-year-old with no capital. They're like, I'm going to get rich starting with no money and just get really good at trading or that kind of thing. So I don't know. I think a little bit it's maybe a cultural problem too, but and then when you get into actual utility, like we have this scatter shot of 20,000, 30,000 blockchains and different blockchain assets and all this other stuff that I think makes it that much muddier. And then we have BSV, which is useful. And there's another couple of chains that are also, I think, legitimately trying to solve problems. And I don't want to say everybody else sucks and BSV is just, so much better. Although I do think it is. But conceptually, like, that almost makes it feel like now you're being the salesman for that, right? Which makes it sound like every other thing. It's like if I represented the Cardano Foundation or something, and it's like, well, let me tell you how we're going to change your life, and you just got to buy, ADA or whatever. Like, how do you deal with some of the drama, like the specific political drama around BSV, and then trying to have an actual conversation about utility without sounding like you're trying to be a salesperson?
Yes, well, the thing is, I always explain that any blockchain, and of course there are many things called blockchain that are not really blockchains.
Yeah.
Okay, but let's assume they're blockchain, just to speak about it.
Mm-hmm.
There are parameters, and you have to analyze the parameters. Okay, so it is public or private. It's either transparent or not. It's either dominated by a group of people or not. Maybe you can read and write on it or not. Maybe secure, or maybe you can rewrite operations. And then you just have to ask the question, why would you use this technology if it is not good for the purpose, So this is a real question. Now, I'm not going to tell people what to use. That's the problem, because obviously this is what differentiates winners from losers, from different points of view. I mean, if you are promising a certain result and then you're not delivering, of course, you're opening yourself to all kinds of problems. And I think, this also will come, but then again, this is not my problem. I, as an educator, basically explain a range of solutions. I cover the parameters. Obviously, this is not private information. Anybody can go, because you just have to take the white papers of each one of them, where they describe what they are doing, and then put it in the situation that you want to use it for business and you want to achieve certain results. Can you achieve these results with this technology or with this one? This is for the student to answer after they have read and they have fully understood what is the implication of each one of these parameters that define the technology. Now, this is obviously totally different from a person speculating in markets,
Right.
So this is a different job, if one is in the markets, if one wishes to, to speculate, to make bets, okay, this is a different job, this is a different trade, and I am not really giving any advice on that. It's the same as in finance. My PhD is in finance. I don't give financial advice or advice about where to put your money. At your own risk.
Right. Well, that's hard too. Because I get the same thing. I do a technology show. I've always been a technologist, and inevitably that I would have people in the comments section like, yeah, but what would you buy, or what are you buying? And I'm like, man, I don't know. I might be crazy. Like it's not. It's not really like it's involved because it is an economic tool. It's just like anything else. It's like, hey, you should get into get into farming, and it's like, well, you got to buy farm equipment. What farm equipment should I buy then, right? And so it's a little bit like you have to invest in tooling a little bit, but I think it's a different idea to talk about investing in business tools versus investing for the sake of speculation. But it's so hard to break those two things apart because of like how much people just perceive it as investment first, basically.
Yeah, but in reality, blockchain is a management tool. Okay. Unfortunately, given the situation that you need to have a token attached to it, basically to pay for the cost, right, of the operation you're doing, people are taking the token to be somewhat, parallel to currency or to, fiat or to a share of a stock, when actually it has nothing to do with it. Even the markets are not the same type of markets. Some markets are regulated, they are there is oversight, there is some kind of auditing going on. Some others are not, so the problem is the parallelism in that you see two wheels and, and you think you're driving a car, but you're not, you're just on the top of, so I think this is the problem. I also think the problem is how information began to spread originally, which was through the markets, and it was not through the application of the technology in solving business situations, so as a business tool, and I think it's very difficult to get out of that because, many people dream and they have a dream of becoming rich, and they have a dream of knowing 3 tricks, and because they heard somebody else got it, they also think they can get it. I think this is a personality issue, and it's also maybe a generational issue, but okay, that's again, I'm not there. I don't see the fun of it either, I guess it's a personality matter. So okay.
Yeah, no, I find it stressful. I'm a capable investor and trader. I've done it, but it's not fun. I don't know why people think that sounds better than working a job. I really like business. I like entrepreneurship. So
well, I like the creation of solutions. I like making people's life better. Not okay, earning more money is great. It gives you safety, it gives you choices and options to life, and it makes your life let's say, a little bit less stressful. But I think what matters is what you do in your life, and that's what you do every day, and solving real problems, benefiting the lives of many is much more interesting, from my point of view, obviously. And this is our target. Actually, our education goal is adoption. So basically, is to be able to explain to entrepreneurs why this is a tool they can use in their business to improve their situation, and to do things better, to optimize processes and so on. So basically, this is our goal.
Mm-hmm. So I see a couple questions asking about like some BSV specifics, and there's been some discussion about like how much do we want to talk about Bitcoin as the technology versus blockchain as the technology? Sort of like a PR and marketing question. What do you think? What do you think is the best approach as somebody that's education director with BSV Blockchain? Do you approach it from the angle of like, here's what Bitcoin is and here's why it's useful, or do you sort of shy away from like the Bitcoin related history and talk more about the tech generically? Like what do you find more effective in your experience?
I like to talk about blockchain because I find it is a generic name. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, when you start teaching, you have to start at some point, and then I like to do it chronologically. So, of course, there was a blockchain before Bitcoin, and there were, many of the problems Bitcoin solved earlier. Digital currencies, however we want to call it, were trying to solve it as well. So there were problems there. Some of them were different problems, but basically Bitcoin solved all of the problems, and this is the reason why it became successful, right? So I like to talk about blockchain because it's generic and because it allows me to encompass everything my students will see in their day-to-day. If I only talk about Bitcoin, they'll say, what about Ethereum? Or what about, Cardano, or what about whatever, hyperlayer, So I like the generic name, but then I like to start saying, okay, there were these problems, there were these technologies, and through time, people were trying to tackle these issues. And then we come to 2008, and this person published this paper, and thereafter it published the program, that successfully resolve these matters, and now the question is, what can you use it for? And then, of course, 2-3 years later, other, let's call it competitors, just for the sake of giving them a name, came to the market with different solutions or different approaches, and these are the differences in their key aspects. And I like to take it from there. I like to tell them, well, if you use this technology, what happens? Is this really distributed? Is it not? Who decides what goes into a block? Do you know it? Where is it written? Or is it sustainable? Can you afford it? For what kind of operations? Because these are the real questions for a business person. So I am a person from the business community, and this is basically the approach I always take.
Yeah, no, I think that's smart. I think that's smart. Really treat it like a solutions-based approach to things, because again, with the finance, that's the opportunity. I find it so difficult myself to get past. And I have my own audience that understands and is curious about the technology, but I was just at Mining Disrupt about a month ago, and and I'm asking people questions, and it's like they keep bringing it back to we know the price is going to go up and this and that, and like they just keep they just have this like pre-programmed. Because I was asking people based on like the revenue charts and stuff of these companies that are mining. There's a few big public mining companies, and they're something like 90 to 95% of their money is coming from everything that isn't Bitcoin mining. So the Bitcoin mining is actually break even, and it's gotten to the point where not just their profits, but their revenue even is from all these other things. So it's on, even just like stock, playing games with their stock and buybacks and, financial vehicles, or it's things like carbon credits or curtailment agreement payments and like lots of other stuff going into it. And it's like, asking these people like, hey, do you realize that Marathon Digital Mining, the second largest publicly traded mining company, would be bankrupt if they were just mining Bitcoin? If that was the only thing they were doing as a company, they wouldn't be a company. And they're like, well, how could that be? And so there's such a weird disconnect on, I think, how well everybody's doing also.
Yeah.
That like you get the Bitcoin, the BTC small blocker thing, like, oh, we've made it, we've won, everything's great. But in reality, the infrastructure side of things, like they are not really even paying their bills without being very, very creative, to the point where their companies have become more of a side hustle than even focused on Bitcoin. And I don't know. I think it's a crazy, there's a crazy imbalance in the culture and the way that their businesses are functioning. And I don't think people even know. So I wonder, like, do you have these sorts of conversations with people about, like, hey, if we don't start to actually fix these problems, we're going to start to have very serious, industry level crises unless we fix some of these problems.
Yeah, for me, the key aspect is to support the miner.
Yeah.
The miner needs to be supported, and it needs to be supported out of the amount of operations it does as a regular business. Because I think of the miner a little bit like a bond. It's a fixed payment.
Yep.
So they have to have like a fixed payment in the sense of the size of the block and the average operation and the average revenue they get, to get, let's say, a revenue that is consistent with the amount of risk after covering all of their costs and everything else. Okay, so I think you have to support the miner. The miner is essential for all of this sector. And okay, what are you going to do once you run out of the 21 million? Or what are you going to, it's so obvious, and it's such an absurd situation, that okay, you can play tricks, you can do the double jump back and forth, and convince everybody to put a glass of water on their heads, and what within 15 miles. But this has nothing to do with a sustainable industry. What has to do with a sustainable industry is people who can invest in a huge infrastructure, so they can benefit the whole economy, because this is how it's going to work, right? So obviously a miner needs to have a very large infrastructure. It needs to make huge investments. It needs to make huge investments constantly, because they need to improve speed, they need to improve efficiency, etc., etc. And they cannot be looking up to say, where is the money going to come from? They need to know where it's going to come from, and it's going to come from the businesses that request their services, right?
Yeah.
And for this to be true, it means it has to be a very high volume operation, because otherwise the business would not be competitive using blockchain. It could not be a tool for solutions. It would be an additional cost that cannot be supported, right? So this is how I look at it. I say, okay, from here till the time, when this is going to be obvious, even to those who don't want to look there, we have this time to build the use case, through business people. And this is actually what is going to support the sector, and what is going to support the miners, and what is going to, from my point of view, obviously, to allow it to benefit everybody. And then it's going to be a different stock market. But I don't mean the stock market of cryptocurrencies. I'm talking about the stock market, the S&P 500, the New York exchange, this and that. Why? Because all of these companies are going to benefit from a new technology,
right?
And they are going to be able to become more efficient. They are going to be able to be trusted by their customers better. I feel it has already been several decades that many businesses choose taking advantage of their customers, as a business strategy. And people can do nothing about it because they don't own the information, and because they deal with, let's say, manipulated data, and they're always at a disadvantage, And my vision is that there is an end to that when the consumer takes control of data, of true facts, and businesses will be facing reality, and they need to change the way they do certain things, and I see this as a new era. I think we are starting. We are starting.
Well, it's an interesting thing. I feel like, if I can sit and talk to someone for an hour or two, I feel like I can start to break through and explain like really why the technology is truly disruptive. But I feel like it takes, like, you can't do it in 10 minutes. I don't think it's possible to pitch something inside of 10 minutes that really explains what the opportunity is. And you have to get through so much crud. But I see somebody asking a question in the box about like AWS and Microsoft, and are they doing workshops with BSV and like that kind of thing? Because like I know from we're involved a little bit in the Terranode testing, and I'm aware of like its use of like IPv6 and some of these other things, like these novel internet technologies that people they know what they are, they hear about them, but they're not really sure like what's the big benefit, what changes if we change this. There's a little anecdote that I've heard from people that I'm working with on Terranode, that like AWS is asked for a certain amount of IPv6 address space, and then the response is, well, why would you need it? What are you trying to do? Like they even, these are some of the best networking engineers on earth, and they look at it and say, well, why go that direction? But then when they see what's happening, they're like, well, here's what we're trying to explain. And then all of a sudden they get like the light bulb moment and say, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. But that's a big conversation. And so I'm wondering, maybe because I'm crazy, or maybe I've overestimated everybody's desire for some tool, but is there a way to pitch these ideas in a way that makes them easier to understand faster? Or do we really just have to be committed to the long explanation and really break down, hey, here's why it matters?
Yeah, I think, the issue is always about who are you talking to. Of course, if you are talking to people who are in the technology sector, it's more difficult to explain to them because they have a know-how, and it's like you have the hammer, you're trying to hit that hammer in everything you see, right? So they go back to their own situation, to their own tool, to their own area of expertise, but that's not what we are talking about, okay? This is this is like if you again, like if you try to solve everything with a hammer. No, the hammer is a hammer, it has a use, but what we're trying to do is solve a problem, and to solve a problem we have a tool full of a box full of tools. So I think, yes, if you are talking to people who are in the IT sector, they are very focused, and they have some kind of let's say malady, because of their knowledge. But if you are talking to people just in general, and you give them a real life situation they can understand intuitively, they can always understand the solution intuitively. And I think intuition is the first step for explaining blockchain. So I always bring examples that are in everybody's, a real life, So for example, if you go to a hotel and this hotel drives you nuts because in every room you have 5 different garbage cans with little titles, and then you are driving yourself crazy saying, okay, where does this one go? Is it here? Is it there? And then you see the cleaning lady who comes, and then they put together all the garbage cans in the big bucket in the corridor.
Yeah.
And you say, what is going on here, right?
Yeah.
But then again, these hotels advertise as they are doing, they are in these sustainable plans and blah, blah. And then I think of myself as I am the city manager, and I am trying to measure, how much really my constituents progress in this respect. What would I do about it? So then I would draw this example to come to a solution based on blockchain, because then you know exactly what garbage you collect, where you collect it, and where you take it, and by comparison, you also see the amount of garbage you collect that doesn't follow this process, right? So you have like a checking point. It's not only what you collect, because the total amount of garbage, right, that goes through the hotel. Well, the one that doesn't go through here goes through this. So you have the checkpoint. But for this, you use blockchain. So, people can identify, these situations, because many of them and most people have lived through something that is equivalent.
Sure.
So I think practical, easy problems, things that concern people in their day-to-day life, not something extraordinary, is like the easy way to go about things. And then they start understanding it, and if you tell them, okay, they are getting help from the government or from the state to do this recycling, and they are really not doing it, then they start to understand there is also some consequences that, impact them as well. And of course, they don't want to be lied. They want to, to be treated with more respect. So one thing, goes to the other. And you can always talk to the businessman who wants to be the one who is most respected. They do understand this because they don't make their money in the stock market. They make their money with their services and products, So this is the right audience.
Right. Real business. So speaking of real business, I know you have some commercial interests in the space as well, and I understand you probably don't want to talk about them in real specific, but I'm curious. What are the things that motivate you as a business person, not just an educator or not just an advocate for the technology, but what do you think is the real commercial opportunity? Presumably, like where you're putting your work is related to something that you think is of particular importance. So I'm curious, of all the things that you could be focused on, what do you think is the big missed opportunity where you are trying to make a direct commercial impact?
Okay, so I think we have to differentiate between, something big or something interesting personally from something that is very useful and can be adopted fast.
Yeah.
And I think our focus should be adoption. So it means not the complex solution that then you need to explain, nobody understands. Maybe there are lots of risks involved, and then entrepreneurs are hesitant to acquire, right? Or they are very complex because all the infrastructure required, or is very complex. I think, okay, those are there. You can start designing things, but for me, the issue is adoption. So I would say we should be striving to develop things that people can understand and they can use immediately, easily.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you call that? Key in hand. You cannot expect people to become engineers, and you cannot ask them to dedicate 2 hours of their lives every day to understand what is going on. No, you have to make a solution that is a solution, not another problem. So I focus on these types of things. I think before we get to the beautiful one that is shocking and so smart and tararara, no, we need to do something that is simple, that city managers can use, for example, to provide better services to their clientele.
Yeah.
Obviously, we always talk about the health systems, public health systems. This is huge. This is complex.
Yeah.
There are many authorities involved, but maybe one small aspect of it, one small aspect that is easy. And of course, you have to build the whole solution. You cannot give a problem,
Yeah.
So this is my focus in reality. My focus is, let's solve easy things.
Right.
That improve the lives of many people. This is the one.
No, it's hard. One of the hard things, I've worked in sales on and off for a good chunk of my own career, and BSV sort of posturing itself as like focus on enterprise and government solutions strikes me as the hard road, because anybody that's worked in the sales cycle with governments or big business know that that's actually the longest possible sales cycle, in that they're not going to adopt a new idea for 5 years or 10 years or whatever, whereas apps and startup culture, like you can bang something out in 6 to 9 months and get customers and that kind of thing if your customer is like a retail consumer. But but there's so much competition on retail stuff in the blockchain space that it's like, okay, let's try to pivot to
but is it working? Because this is the question.
Well,
there's a lot of offer, but does it work? And this is where our opportunity lays, I think, for me. The difference is, okay, to work, it has to be sustainable. it has to be able to scale. It has to be able to fit in a business plan. You have to be able to budget it.
Right.
So that already takes out of the competition.
Yeah.
Like everybody.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Unless you just want to do one operation every 7 months and,
Yeah.
okay, whatever. But my point is for regular operations, big volume operations,
Yep.
you need to forecast, you need to control risks, it needs to scale, it needs to be affordable, and you need to know what the hell is happening. So it needs to be transparent and
Yeah.
so on. It's not that I trust you, good luck,
Right.
So I think this is where opportunity lays, and we should be able to explain it. The problem I see is that many people don't want to give, how do you say that, is king hand solutions,
Yep.
and I think it's not if you don't want to do that, then it's not a solution. You cannot ask the customer to walk half of the way. He's
Right.
already paying you.
Yeah.
You need to walk all the way and give the right service.
Mm.
So this is how I see it. This is what I have in my mind.
Yeah.
And actually I like that. I like to say don't worry, because actually your job is that you don't have to worry.
Mm.
So this is how I would think about it.
No, I think that's good, and I think it's a good response specifically too, because when we think about the problems of any business, really a small business and a big business, they have the same types of problems. It's just the difference is scale. And if we can solve problems that would work for your local small business, and something about their data management or payments or something, the same kind of thing would work for a large hospital group, or a large corporate, or a government. I think one of the big things, and it's controversial, but I actually think that like CBDC or large stable coins are probably a really good thing to get, either large commercial like payment companies or banks, or governments.
Mhm.
So you can solve a problem for the treasury, or your central bank or something. And I know people get wound up because they're like, wow, we don't want to help the government send out more cruddy fiat, but I think it's such a crystal clear example. Like, it's the best real world asset token. Um, and then you're giving this technology that actually solves like a very simple payments problem that a lot of people have, like cross border. Like, imagine not having to use like MoneyGram or some of these other companies that send money over borders. If you could just very trivially send payments and stable coins across borders in a way that wasn't goofy, like using Tether or whatever else.
Yeah.
But what is your experience, or have you had any experience working with companies at that level on that kind of specific payment technology, like stable coins or CBDCs? Or
Yeah, I don't
yeah.
have any experience with that actually, because it's totally the opposite of what I want
Mhm.
to do. Not that it wouldn't be a dream, but in the
Yeah.
sense of there is a lot of friction to get there,
Yeah.
right? Because so this is why I say you have to go with things that have less friction, so
Mm.
you have cases to show for, right? Real
Sure.
cases that are working to show for. Once you get into these environments, you have lots of legislative problems, but it's not
Mhm.
one legislation, it's multiple legislations,
Yeah.
as money channel, different countries, etc., etc. So I see a lot of friction. So I think, yes, of course, you may express this point of view that is a wonderful solution, but with how many people would you have to negotiate? How
Sure.
many legislations would you have to iron? How many approvals would you have to get there?
Yeah.
And I think you can get all of those once you have something to show for. And I think we still don't have anything to show for. I mean,
Interesting.
in a general level, of course,
Sure.
there are
No, I
small
I
things
get what you're
working
saying.
here and there. So
Mhm.
this is why I say go for little friction. Don't go for big friction,
Yeah.
because it's a never-ending road. And also, you deal with people who don't understand it, who are resistant to change.
Right.
I mean, the natural tendency of people is to resist change. They cannot even hear how this technology works versus the one they really like. They don't
Right.
have the patience for that, um, or the spirit for that. So I think you really have to you have to use this technique of foot in the door, something small, and then through the small, opening, cracking the door, you can start sending things inside. But people have to understand it intuitively. They have to understand how it works, and it has to work for them. Okay. And then is when they will be able to take more risks and get themselves into more complex solutions. I think it's very difficult to convince public employees. Furthermore, they don't want to take risks. They do what the other guy does.
Right.
And this is why nothing is really happening, because it's not working. It's not working for, I don't know,
Sure.
10 years, and it's not going to work. But
Yeah.
they are all insisting, this is the way, because nobody wants to take personal risks. So, I think small, little steps.
Sure.
Yes.
So we're in the last few minutes of the show here. I'm curious. Is there anything you wish I would have asked, or another topic that you think is important? That while you have the audience here, we've got about 275 people watching live. Anything you'd like them to know?
No, I would like them, but it's not for me to tell, but I would like them to know more about, for example, mining, all the challenges. Obviously, you are in that sector.
Yeah.
I think it's a key sector. I think many developments are going to come from further developments in that sector. So I think there are going to be lots of, I don't know how to say it, but secondary effects, and many benefits to society also as a consequence of that. So I would say, there are lots of interesting parts in this sector, let's say, talking about blockchain in general. But within blockchain, there are many specific areas that are of interest and they are not known at all. And obviously one of them is the mining aspect of it. I think sustainability of mining, investment, all the difficulties that miners face, I think it should be at the forefront of our consciousness. If a person in this sector should be thinking about that. And maybe I would like for you, in the future, whenever, to educate people about these challenges, for entrepreneurs in mining industry. You told me, you said a few times here during the interview, maybe I am crazy. You said that. And I have to remind you that I saw you with your bananas and your gorillas. So I said, maybe yes.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Maybe it is, yes, a little bit nuts.
Yeah.
But there is a lot to explain. Aside from emotions, and maybe taking this conversation is a conversation that doesn't bring so many emotions, and people is going to be able to listen more willingly and to be more attentive to what you explain. So from my part, it's this is a technology that is here to stay. I would advise people to really learn about it. Obviously, those who want to, those who are interested, and to understand that it is a tool, in the business community, a very important one that is going to have an impact in the economy of the whole world. Obviously, that will impact the markets as well. But indirectly. So I would say take a real interest, learn, listen. I do that. I am interested in all of the technologies, because you need to know how you compare. You need to know every day what is happening, why is this happening. So I would say bring a more open spirit to the table.
That's great. I really I think that's really good advice and a good place to close it, Eva. Where can we learn more? Do you want people to follow you on X, or where's a good spot to stay connected?
Yeah, not on X, because I don't move my X. Yeah, I am not such a good person with social
That's
media.
Okay.
I say my LinkedIn account, maybe.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, so it's Eva Porras, PhD. This is the
Love it.
one. And I promise to make a better effort in X in the future.
No problem. Well, thanks again. It was lovely to catch up. Looking forward to hopefully I'll see you in London in October for London Blockchain Conference.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Sounds
yes.
great. All right. Looking forward to it. Take care.
Thank you for the invitation, and thank you to all the listeners for the patience and for the interest.
For sure. Thank you. All right. So, everybody, Dr. Eva Porras, she's really a delight, and I think her final point is exactly that, like the real opportunity, the opportunity that Bitcoin gives us, the opportunity that the technology gives us broadly, is a technology that has not been adopted in business essentially at all, outside of a few little niches within finance. We have not penetrated into all kinds of aspects of the data economy and all kinds of aspects of the payments economy. And so we're talking about multiple trillions of dollars worth of economy that is ripe for disruption. A lot of these technologies, especially in payments, payment technology is often running in things like mainframes that are 40 years old. They have not updated their stack over 5 generations of full technology overhauls. And they're still running on computers from the 80s, running proprietary operating systems and things. And so if we can disrupt, if we can truly take the technology and teach people how to distribute and how to compute in a way that is hugely beneficial, saving people sometimes in excess of 99% of cost, and then speeding up their business by orders of magnitude. Like these are the kind of conversations that a big company can invest in. And I think a big problem for people is that they're not really sure how to pursue that. Like I talk to other people who are sort of blockchain advocates, and they look at that and say, yeah, maybe I could solve a problem for this company, but by what vehicle am I solving that? So they don't have like their own business opportunity in order to come in and say, hey, I could actually help you solve this problem, and you can pay me to help solve that problem, which is, part of the reason why I created Gorilla Pool, for example. And it's one of the reasons why I tell people very, very consistently to think like an entrepreneur. If you don't know where to start, it could start as simple as, opening up an LLC. So start, my consulting agency LLC, and you focus on, blockchain integration, blockchain adoption, those kind of things. And then you start to create a financial incentive for yourself to help other companies adopt the technology in such a way where they can pay you. Maybe it's something small. Maybe they pay you, $1,000 or $5,000 to help them with some integration. But maybe that turns into, management fees to the tune of millions of dollars a year in order to help them, upgrade their infrastructure and all of these things. And so that's my challenge. Think like an entrepreneur. Get out there, start an LLC. If you have any desire to see these things go really well and go well for yourself, like start a business. It doesn't have to do anything. You don't have to do anything crazy except start that paperwork and maybe go print yourself a business card or something. Get one of those little QR codes that you can tap to follow me on LinkedIn. So anyways, I really appreciate you, everybody. I appreciate our sponsors, Rock Wallet, Otherworldly TCG, and I think Orange Gateway should be our next sponsor. So I'm putting a little pressure on them too. Everybody, we appreciate you most of all, the viewers and the listeners. Your subscriptions really, really help. So please like, subscribe, hit the alert bell, and give us comments. When you comment too, it also lets the algorithmic overlords know that you love me. You really love me. So everybody, thanks for tuning in. Thank you to CoinGeek for making the show possible. Thank you to Mr. Producer, also live from sunny South Florida. And most of all, be good to each other. If we can't be good to each other, well, then none of it's worth anything else anyways. Like we have enough ruthless people out there. Let's get some more good people out there. I think that'd be good too. So I'm Kurt Wuckert Jr. signing out. I will see you next week at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the CoinGeek Weekly Livestream.